which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. If we could go ahead and get a roll call, please.
Chairperson Davis,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Ezell,
Here.
Commissioner Lance. Here. Commissioner Sherrill,
Here.
Commissioner Souder.
Here.
And if everyone has had a moment to review the minutes from the July 10th, 24 meeting, if we could go ahead and get a motion and a second to approve.
Motion to approve the minutes as written. Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval.
Vice Chairperson Ezell,
Yes.
Commissioner Lance. Abstain. Commissioner Sherrill,
Yes.
Commissioner Souder,
Yes.
Chairperson Davis.
Yes. And at this time, if there's any communication or comments by the public before we get started on any cases here tonight? Okay, great. We'd like to go ahead and start tonight with 1604 Clomont Drive. This is update on progress. Yes.
So we have Mr. Mayo on Zoom. He's the attorney for the property located at 1604 Glomont. I'll give my update, and then I'll also let him kind of give an update as well. So I sent an email to the property manager, Mr. Mayo, and then also their contractor on July 24th to let them know that we had some confusion with the emergency hearing that we wanted to do because of wrong dates, etc. But I let them know that they needed to have the infill blocks done, the sheetrock exposing the studs, have cost breakdowns to repair the structures, have an electrician out and a plumber looked out to look at both structures, and to have the engineer out to do an inspection along with our department to look at the studs and then the floor joists too if they were still exposed. Also, it was put in to have a statement provided from the building envelope specialist as suggested from the structural engineer, and here we are. Now I have not gone out to do an inspection. I reached out to Courtney to ask about some status, and she said that she was going to get with Mr. Zach on that, and then I didn't hear anything, and then Mr. Mayo contacted me today. So
at this time, we don't know the status from the July 10th.
I'd assume Mr. Mayo has more information for us. But.
Great. Mr. Mayo, do you have an update for us?
I do on some of the topics that Mrs. Holder mentioned, and on others I don't. But I can make a commitment to get the answer and submit it for those that I don't have an update on. I do want to just briefly say thank you for letting me participate by Zoom. I was disappointed to learn I got brought on this a little bit late in the game, as sometimes happens, and found out that no one had appeared for at least one of the meetings. And I just want to apologize for that. That wouldn't have happened if I had known that if I had been engaged, and that won't happen going forward, whether I'm here or not. Someone will always be here. So on the status of the July order, I'm not sure I have the entered version. I do have a copy of the Word version that Mrs. Holder provided to me on the 24th. And I think the structure of the order was essentially, part one, the water removal and mediation plan. And then part two, the structural sort of uncovering project. And then part three would be the resolution of the building envelope specialist. So I guess I'd like to start with that one. My client had there was confusion about sort of the definition of a building envelope specialist and what the Housing Commission would consider to be qualified. And, he was asking whether the structural specialist would qualify. My feeling is probably not, since the structural report had requested that someone else look at it. But I have to say, having done quite a bit of architectural and construction litigation work over the years, building envelope specialist, it wouldn't immediately, that doesn't immediately have a meaning to me as to what sort of MEP field or architecture or somewhere else that ought to be sourced from. So I don't think that person has been hired, but there's a willingness to hire that person if the board could, or the commission could provide a little more specificity about what would be accepted there.
Awesome. So Tori, can can you go into a little bit more details about what's needed for the building envelope specialist, for what we're needing from them exactly?
So that is really a good question. That's something I'm gonna need to ask Michael Howell on, because we normally don't deal with building envelope specialists, so I'm not very familiar with what I need to look for, who we need to look for, etc. So I asked that. Let me get with him and ask on that one.
Would BJW, the structural engineers who reported and requested that, would they be able to give us more feedback and maybe referrals?
I'm sure.
Okay. Okay, so I guess that's something that we need to go ahead and,
Reach out to. I can do that.
yeah, go ahead and get that on to make sure that that doesn't fall behind, since that's something that we were requesting.
I think we could also, ask BJM for a referral, and so long as the commission approves, BJM's recommendation, I think we could just go ahead and get moving on that. The only question really was just what type of person that they were thinking would be appropriate. I wanted to confirm that the Housing Commission would feel satisfied by the recommendation from the structural folks.
Okay, yeah.
Fine with it.
Part two, we're going a little bit backwards on this. I know that in our last meeting, we were very concerned about the structure. And so we don't know any update on any of that.
Okay, so let me just put this out there. The owner has been, he's been reluctant to engage in taking off all of the interior finishes because it would sort of drastically increase the cost of repair for the project. And frankly, in the conversations that he had with the structural engineer, that wasn't what the structural engineer asked him to do. Granted, in the final report, it says, we recommend removing all of these. And then if that's not feasible, we recommend a sampling approach. The conversation that I understand Ross had with the engineer was, okay, I see what you've done here. You've taken some of the drywall off. You need to take a little more off so that we can confirm that the moisture has not gone further behind the wall. I can only see some of the studs. So understanding that the commission made its findings, and I think on at least one of those occasions, there was nobody here to challenge them, and not asking that ruling be, in any way invalidated, accept it completely. I did want to ask whether, in light of the representation that Ross has made to me, which is that the remediation project would more than double in cost. His estimate was probably around $9,000 without taking off all the drywall and redoing all the drywall and the interior finishes. He thought it'd be at least twice that if all those things had to be removed. I wanted to ask if the Housing Commission would consider accepting the recommendation from the structural engineer, which was a sampling approach where some portion of the drywall is removed in a pattern or whatever the structural engineer recommended, rather than removing every piece. I understand that the board is very concerned about eliminating any risk of water damage in the structure. I fully understand that concern. I'm a real estate investor myself, and that's not something that I'd want to leave behind any wall for any tenant. But I also know, having had moisture intrusions in my properties before, I've not ever removed every piece of drywall and all of the interior trim and the fixtures to check for moisture damage there. It would be kind of a targeted effort. And then once we confirm the scope of the intrusion, that part would be replaced, and we wouldn't remove every piece. So in some sense, I understand that something happened with your deliberation before I was engaged. And I would just ask if considering that the engineer made in his report that as an option, I think the recommendation was remove everything. If not feasible, use sampling. I would ask if the commission would be open to doing that with the sampling report or the sampling methodology, maybe decided together between Mrs. Holder and the engineer.
What questions does everybody have about that?
Way it reads, if you can't take everything off, if I'm sitting here reading this correct, then it explains they want you to go through and look for discoloration, warped, but the very last thing it states is or the smell of mold. When you back up under observations, it states number 5, in each unit, the strong smell of mold suggests water damage. So I'm kind of curious, if you're not taking them all off, but yet the whole place smells like mold, according to this piece of paper, who draws the line on which one you're going to look at?
I
That's why
understand.
it was suggested to take them all off.
Understood. May I ask, what the date is of the report that you're reviewing? The one that I was working from is the May 17th, 2024.
July 8th.
Okay. Unfortunately, I don't think I've seen the July 8th report. And I do understand how the sort of a persistent smell would justify a more significant intrusion. I guess, can I ask this? Would the commission, if the structural engineer were to say, this is a version of sampling plus something else, or sampling that I think would address the mold or has a good chance of determining whether there is water in these areas, would the commission consider following the recommendation of the structural engineer? I haven't had that conversation with him, and it may be in light of the July 2024 report that that's no longer an option. But if it is an option, it would be, in some sense, it feels wasteful to me, because it's not just the drywall that's being removed. Like, so much of the sort of finish work for plumbing and electrical would also have to be redone. Much of the insulation would have to be redone. And whatever is damaged needs to be repaired 100%. But what isn't damaged maybe does not need to be demolished and then redone at such great cost.
I think the plumbing and some of those items are compromised because of the shift in the property due to the water. I don't think that was just particularly due to the mildew and mold problem from the structure being flooded for 8 months. There was a good amount of water under the structure for an extended period of time. So I think that's.
I agree. And I agree. And I didn't mean to walk back on anything we've committed to do on that piece of it. I was thinking more of sort of lighting fixtures or faucets or, just other things that would be attached to the wall that then have to be detached, reattached. It greatly increases the cost. Is essentially, as maybe some of you know, like getting the drywall up is a big step in the construction process, and starting over on that would be difficult financially for the owner, notwithstanding his desire to resolve these things.
Question on that, Tori, was that work, the drywall that was installed, was that permitted?
To my knowledge, they haven't installed any new drywall.
Not new drywall?
It's existing.
If I hear you correctly, you're asking us to consider taking a recommendation from the structural engineer about the removal of certain areas of drywall to check for mold or rot.
That's correct. Yeah, I'm not going off making my own recommendations. It's not my area of expertise, and I don't expect you to defer to what the property owner thinks he ought to do either. I was sort of hoping that we could follow in the direction that the structural engineer had identified and said, hey, if it's not feasible, I don't know what feasible meant to him. It may not have been financially, but if it's not feasible, this is something that could also work. And I just would ask the commission to consider kind of building that idea out a little bit, or asking the engineer to do so, maybe in a letter to be submitted to the Housing Commission.
What you're asking, the letter we have that you don't have is the structural engineer. This is his recommendation. When I was reading that to you, that is the July 8th recommendation by the structural engineer. So you're wanting to go back and ask him to reevaluate and come up with a better solution, I think is what you're asking.
Well, if the July letter says, the sampling's not feasible, or is not the recommendation, that only removing all of the drywall, I would tend to agree with you. I don't think it makes sense for us to go back and ask for something else. But as of May, the structural engineer seemed to think that was an option. If he subsequently changed his opinion, I will live with that outcome. I've already said we'll defer to the recommendation of the engineer. So that would be the request. And I guess the only other thing I'll add on that is just some So I'm in the business of mitigating risk, and I'm asked to write opinion letters a lot. And what I would write in an opinion letter is opinion letters are going to be used for something. It's going to be used to mitigate risk for the person that I receive it. So long story short, I think engineers write letters that are intended to be that may not be this exact same conversation that you would have standing in the house, kind of looking at the items. There's a very good incentive for the engineer to say remove everything, but then as you're standing there looking at it, it may say the conversation has been, I understand, we'll just remove a little more so we can see what's there and where the mold damage stops, not remove the entire thing. And if ultimately the only letter that will be written is remove everything, that's what we'll live with. But if there's a middle path, we'd be grateful to explore that with the Housing Commission. And ultimately, it might end up with a better finished product for the tenant. It doesn't, in my view, it doesn't make much sense to remove all of the drywall and rebuild it when that money could have been spent doing other things that would make a bigger difference on that property for someone who wanted to live there.
Tori, is there any part of these the duplex, the entire structure, that did not have water intrusion underneath it for extended period of time? Or was it through the entire thing? My concern is the rot.
It's kind of hard to, I guess, justify. When I went in both units, it looked like the backside of those units took the majority of the hit from the water damage. Looking back and trying to like map myself through, I want to say like the living room areas weren't as bad as like the bathroom and the bedroom. Does that make sense? So like really where the kitchen, the bathroom, one of the bedrooms, like that whole back half of the house or the duplexes, that's really what received the most amount of damage.
And was there, if I recall, and I may be getting this confused with another property, so please forgive me, there was visible separation, or was there like change in leveling of the floors due to?
Yes, you
Okay.
can tell where you've got, some foundation cracks on the outside, especially from where your foundation has shifted from the water intrusion. And I mean, looking at it as well, like in the bathroom when you're on the inside looking at the joist, you can tell where they've kind of shifted. And those are obviously rotted because of the amount of water damage. But is it feasible to do the sampling? Sure. Because I don't think that the living rooms were as bad. I can't tell you necessarily how bad they are without, again, stripping it down to the studs and letting me look at everything. But it was not as bad as the back of the house. So I guess it's a 50-50, honestly.
Well, we have seen where they go in, if the home's been flooded, they'll come up 1 foot, 2 foot, whatever, and cut a strip around. Would that be feasible?
It could be. I also liked what the structural engineer suggested as well, which was to do the infill block. And that's going to reduce the amount of water that's going to come in from those vents. I know a lot of times, like if the structures are in the flood zones, you have to build anyways 1 foot above that base flood level. This one's not in a flood zone. It just unfortunately gets hit by all the water because there's no flow, which they have mitigated that. I think I mentioned this last meeting. I had code enforcement go ahead and write up the other structure for where the ditch line is for their grass. So to my knowledge, I went out there and that was taken care of. They did clean up their side. So
Do we know if the infill has been done?
I don't know.
Do you, sir?
Mr. Mayor?
I do not know, but I will have the answer for you and we'll send it to you by tomorrow. The question of the commission also gave me another idea, is I haven't been in the house. I accept Mrs. Holder's description of it completely. I wonder if the commission would consider kind of a phased approach where we looked at the worst room first, removed the drywall in that room and kind of looked at what was there. And then from that point, made a decision about whether the rest of the drywall in the entire house, including the ceilings and other rooms that were not as badly affected, should also be removed. That might be a middle path where you folks felt like you got a full view of what was there and what needed to be done, and also would potentially save cost if the damage was not as bad as we all hope it is not, right?
I like that idea, but one of the other things that's in the back of my head is keeping up with all of these costs, because we do have to make sure that we stay at that benchmark of, what, is it 50%? Which from what I'm hearing, it sounds like we would probably be under it, but I'm still very skeptical because there is so much that could potentially go wrong when you have a structure shift. and even in this report, it says to further monitor. So we're not 100% sure on that either, but making sure that we keep up with all those costs and getting appropriate estimates for the remediation. Do you have a question?
Can the ceiling sheetrock be inspected from the attic?
I don't believe that we went up in there. I don't remember going in the attic to look at that. That is something I can do.
But an envelope specialist, if they were removing sheetrock for somebody to look at is that something that they could do, go in the attic and see the sheetrock from above?
That's something we can do, whoever.
Jeff, did you have a question?
I didn't hear the original question about the dirt work. I was too busy looking at this.
Oh, I asked if the infill had been done in the foundation block.
Oh.
Find out.
And the neighbors did clean up their trench side of it, so the water could flow. Now, we did have rains the end of July. Have you been out? I mean, has there been any issues from the heavy rains a few weeks ago?
Not to my knowledge. This one also is, I mean, it's been on my plate, but I also have 10, 12 inspections a day, so I'm not always, on that road looking at it.
Okay. So what are thoughts?
And going back to your original question, I don't have a problem if y'all don't, as far as eliminating this about the musty smell, and go back to, we're gonna check all the discolored, the cracked, the warped, and the softened sheetrock, which could pertain to all the rooms. I mean, it could be a spot in every room. It can't be just one room. But that's what he wrote in this report, and I don't have a problem with that. I could go along with that without taking all of it down to start with, but it does state that if you find damage under the one that's soft or whatever the case may be, and you take it off, there's damage, then you have to continue removing. It does state that.
I think, I understand that process. That I think that it maybe is the conversation between Ross and the engineer, is that you've got to kind of remove enough that you can see there's good wood at the next stud, to kind of get to the edge of whatever the damage is. I could represent that. I know the owner would be agreeable to taking that recommendation from the engineer and investigating those discolored areas, which I think is what anyone would do if it were their house. They would look for the piece where there's evidence probative of water damage and then address that piece and then make a decision about what to do next.
So right now, we are looking at doing the checks of the damaged areas and then also circling back up on an envelope specialist. Am I correct? Is that where we are? Okay.
That's what I understand. Plus, I need to give you all an update on the infill work and also the sort of aggregated costs.
Yes. Somebody want to ask a question?
Still have me puzzled one thing here, how we're gonna continue, monitoring the structure for movement, if we're gonna go ahead and fix it. What are we looking at then? You got me on that part of this. If I can read this to you. It says we recommend monitoring the building for further cracking and movement of exterior brick veneer and interior finishes, which would indicate the continuation of foundation settlement. Now, I know I ain't the sharpest knife in the drawer, but if we go ahead and just fix this and people move in it, how are we monitoring this movement? If it moves, let's just go that way. You lose me on that particular statement.
That one is a challenge. I tend to agree. Although new drywall will crack in the same way that old drywall would, if there's further foundation shifting. I think at a minimum, there would be the opportunity to see how things progress and whether there was further settlement between now and whenever the date that the repairs are finished, which could be a period of months, I gather, from the way this has proceeded so far. So there would be some limited observation ability there. But there could be inspections post move-in also, if that was, or if that was something that, the city of East Ridge had the capacity to do. I understand Mrs. Holder's very busy.
So once people move in, that pretty much eliminate us from going inside and checking it out. Is that not correct?
I don't know the answer to that, unfortunately.
I think what Mr. Mayo is saying is like they would be willing to give us the opportunity to follow up inspections after all the work has been mitigated and done. So if that's the case, we could somehow form that into writing that we would schedule it every so often, or whatever it is that you guys decide y'all want to do in order for us to kind of monitor as well. We can set that up.
Part of the inspection process to finish out the code, for you to approve it, to get the occupancy, you would have to check that anyhow, correct?
I would, yeah. So I would do inspections from start to finish. So depending on what all is being done, which I would assume everything is going to have to be done, we'd go in, do the rough ends and the finals, and then on the building final, I'm gonna, look at everything, final walkthrough on it. And we won't issue a certificate of occupancy because it's not a new structure, but we can do certificate of completion. So that's something that we could do, just signing off saying that it meets if need be.
Well, with all that said and done, I guess, we have to make a motion to carry out this piece of paper with the way it's stated then, which is the July 8th structural report. Pretty much correct.
My knowledge.
Then I make a motion and we go ahead and continue on with what this structural engineer, says we need to do to get our answers.
I would like to add to the motion, to continue on, and then, of course, keeping a record of all the cost, to make sure that we stay within our threshold.
What do you think with that, Mr. Mayo?
I'm grateful for the consideration. I think that's just much more palatable to the owner. He'll be grateful for the efforts that compromise there, and we'll get cracking on it.
Now, you stated you don't have a copy of the July
8th.
8th report.
I don't, no, I'm sorry. I don't have that in my files as of today.
Tori, you'll be able to have an inspection once they have some sheetrock pulled off, right?
Yes, I'm gonna suggest that. I trust the structural engineer. That's what they do, but that's what I do as well. So I want both of us out there.
Sure.
After May 17th, that sounds just like the July 8th. I don't know what's different.
Okay. So the motion is to continue with the structural engineer's recommendations and to get those inspections done and containing the cost that is protrude with this, all back here by the September 11th meeting.
And the envelope specialist is also is in this, so we're covered by that. Okay. Do we have a motion? Yes, we have one. Do we have
I second.
a motion and a second? 2 seconds.
Vice Chairperson Ezell? Commissioner Lance?
Yes.
Commissioner Sherrill?
Yes.
Commissioner Souter?
Yes.
Chairperson Davis?
Yes. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to participate, and I will see you next month.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Is it okay if I close the meeting? Would you like me to leave it open?
Yes, sir. You're
It's
good.
fine.
Okay, very good. Yep, have a good night.
You do.
The next item is 2115 Eldridge Road.
So this house has the proper permits. I've actually just did an inspection, I wanna say last week. So my recommendation is to just let it go through the permitting process and inspection process and let us kinda do what we need to do with it from there. But other than that, I mean, it's secure, they're doing what they need to do, so.
Is this one that is potentially recommended to close?
Yeah, I think so. Like I said, they're on it. They've pulled the proper permits. We're out doing the inspections on it, so.
Get a motion?
I'm
Close
still
it.
writing down the first one.
On Ms. Holder's recommendation, I make a motion that we close Eldridge Road from the Housing Commission.
Second.
Have a motion and a second.
Vice Chairperson Ezell,
Yes.
Commissioner Lance,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherrill,
Yes.
Commissioner Souter,
Yes.
Chairperson Davis.
Okay, the next item is 1646 Keeble Street, and this is on the progress.
So lots of progress has been made. They're going to need some more dumps. They've still got some items that need to go. They have definitely been working hard. I can see the concrete slab back there, so that's very, very good news. I like to see that. I actually went out today. My recommendation is to definitely give them some more time. They're showing me progress. They're working as fast as they can. Miss Robbins texts me all the time, like, I'm ready. Come get this dumpster. We got to go. I'm like, okay. I am going to get with Mr. Litchford. I'm also going to get with them as well. The first two dumps were taken care of, but I'm going to work with them on getting on a payment plan, and he's going to work on getting that kind of drafted, and we figure out where to go from there to make it more feasible for you guys. And as soon as I have that available, we can.
Oh, great. That's awesome you guys have been able to get so much done.
Yeah, they have.
So I know it's a lot of work. So, and nothing else is going in, it's just all getting
Yep, it's coming out.
full news. Awesome.
If you're maintaining, if you're keeping up with the progress, is there a reason for them to have to come back next month?
Not necessarily. Honestly, I recommend at least passing it for 2 months just to give them some extra time. It's been hot. I wouldn't want to be out there sweating like that trying to get it cleaned up. I mean, they do by all means, but listen, I definitely give them credit for that because there's no way.
Thoughts on passing it to October 9th?
Make a motion that 1646 Keeble be passed to the October.
Second.
What is the date of it? Ninth?
Ninth.
Okay, October 9th meeting.
Vice Chairperson Ezell, Commissioner Lance,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherrill,
Yes.
Commissioner Souter,
Yes.
Chairperson Davis.
Yes.
Let me ask this, do you have any idea how many, idea on the number of more loads? Like five to, we'll just say 5 to 10, so it's $80 per load to dump. So we're looking in the neighborhood of 400 to 800, somewhere in that ballpark, right? Okay, that helps me at least kind of figure out. I'll talk to City Manager Miller. The concern is just somehow getting security on the reimbursement for those costs. I think I can come up with something, but any idea on what sort of timetable you need for a repayment plan?
I get monthly checks, all I get, so I get $1,238 a month, and half of it goes to the lawyer already, so,
To the who? Lawyer?
a lawyer,
Bankruptcy.
bankruptcy lawyer.
Ah, okay. Oh. Okay, so,
But this isn't their property.
It's in my uncle's name, and he's also under bankruptcy with the house.
Didn't know that.
Okay, so the house is tied up in a bankruptcy?
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk to Mr. Miller, and that does change some things like you and I talked, that does impact what we're able to do. And figure out how we can, basically what I'm trying to ensure is that the city is secured with respect to reimbursement of.
Oh, yeah, I will reimburse. I promise you I'll reimburse somehow, but I get, you know, just saying what kind of bills I got, you know.
Understood,
also.
right, okay. Well, I'll talk to City Manager Miller, and it's one of those, we don't have to do that here. We can come up with a plan. The goal here is to get compliance, which is occurring as it relates to reimbursement and stuff. That's not really this body's, domain. So let me talk to City Manager Miller. We'll figure something out. Absolutely. Thank you all for your work.
Thank you. Yeah, to pass it to October 9th. October, yeah, sorry. Did I say
I'm
August?
working, I promise. I'll get with you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. The last item on the list is 3602 Phelps Street, and this is the progress from July 10th.
So I'm sure you guys remember, it caught on fire again. The fire investigator did release that. I still don't know what the cause was. They were thinking it was fireworks. I'm not 100% sure. The fire was in the garage portion of the structure anyways, which they were enclosing that, so it really didn't change their scope. They were stripping that down to enclose it. So since that was released, I talked with the chief building official to see what he wanted to do, and he was okay with continuing forward considering they weren't changing the scope, they were tearing that stuff down anyways. So that's what we've been doing. We went out for an inspection today, actually. I did a framing inspection and also the house wrap. So they're moving along. I've had contact with Mr. Brent. With him not living here, I told him I would give the update because they are showing me progress and we're in it doing inspections. And I've had that communication with him as well.
So the secondary fire was not due to anything mechanical, electrical, nothing with the house or arson?
No, it could have been just some kids that set something off and, you know, it just, lo and behold, went over there. I'm not really sure. And because some of that was already charred anyways, it just kind of gave more fuel to its fire.
So he's pulled all his permits to do all this work.
Yes, yes,
Obviously, it's back in the rebuild stage now.
completely. In my opinion, I think
I think we're
if
past
we-
60 days. Give him time to do something.
just let it go through the permitting process.
Pass it or close it.
Oh, I ain't gonna close it. I don't close nothing till Codes is happy.
I'm happy. I say close it because I do have that contact with them. And I've been out there and I've done more than one inspection. Oh, goodness. But it's up to you guys.
Well, it's already been permitted, you're already inspecting or rebuilding. So, in the event that they quit and didn't finish it, then it could be brought back here, right?
Yes, sir.
And a closure is not the same as dismissal. When we do these, a closing is without prejudice, meaning if it's dismissed, we do a dismissal order. With this one nor the Elledge one is not a dismissal, it's just a closing. So you can always bring it back.
All right.
Fair
So
enough.
I'll make a motion, we close the case, 3602 Phelps Street.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
Vice Chairperson Ezell, Commissioner Lance,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherrill,
Yes.
Commissioner Souder,
Yes.
Chairperson Davis.
Yes. At this time, do we have any communication, comments, correspondence from the board?
I do. You just explained that, and thank you for that. But does that mean that at some point we need to go back and dismiss them?
Well, that's actually, yeah, we could probably.
They
yeah.
just go in
Yeah.
Never Never Land?
Yeah, well, it's, in the legal world, yeah, it would be what they call clean up the docket.
Right.
So, I generally, guess maybe I'm thinking, in the past, we've had some where we have dismissed because it came back after a completion of a project, but why don't we do this? That's a good question. We'll count on our codes to kind of keep this on the monitor. They know when the CO has been issued, and so if it's been a housing commission, then we just need to come on the agenda for complete dismissal at that point, and that'll completely terminate the proceedings relative to that property.
I have a question about the structural engineer report. I don't know that we all had a copy of the July 8th. I think that was one that maybe was passed around in July, because
I think I gave you mine. I don't think I made copies, honestly. Sorry. I can get you guys a copy if you
That's
want.
why we were
But
kinda
when you were
looking.
reading it, I couldn't tell any difference in what you were reading and what I was looking at on my May 17th.
Similar.
So, because we were all like, wait, hold on, none of us had
Do we have a
it.
copy of it?
I do.
Do now.
Yeah.
Can you just scan that and circulate that? Because I'll need that for my order.
Jeff, you're special.
did not realize that.
I was sitting here looking.
We don't have to have it right now, Tori. You can email it.
I'm skeptical
Well, I
about
just wanted to make
the,
sure we were waiting on
getting that structure level at the cost, staying, the cost of doing that. Just from experience, I know how expensive it is to reinforce and level a structure, just even of that size. That worries me. I mean, is that a codes for it to be in compliance? Doesn't it need to be at a certain level? I mean. Just question there. Educate me.
I mean, essentially, yeah, it should be level. Like when we're looking at new builds, if it's not, we're gonna call you for it. So, essentially, yes, it needs to be square.
And just with all that damage, all the water, I can't
It's rough.
fathom the amount of rot.
It's rough. I'm telling you, the entire backside of those duplexes gone. You're gonna have to start over.
As it continues to dry, it's just gonna.
Rot more.
If your door frame is like leaning while I'm looking at it, like you got a problem. You got some issues going on.
That's my questioning. I mean, we need to make sure that we have secured bids that are not questionable.
I don't want to say caution, but I will kind of throw this out here just because I think we've talked about this before. And I mean, it doesn't matter. Whatever y'all decide is what y'all decide. But they do have a contractor on staff with them already. So unless y'all order that you want the 3 bids, I don't see them coming in with the 3 bids. They're going to come in with whomever they utilize as their contractor already. Does that make sense? Which is like what Las Casas Construction. I don't know how to say their name. Something like that.
And that does save a lot of money.
Exactly.
However, I just want to make sure it's done the right way, because
will
that
be.
can set a precedent for, yeah.
Me and Michael failed all but 2 inspections today, if that tells you anything. So we're very persistent.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments? If there's nothing else at this time, we can adjourn until September.